Hello everyone and welcome to this month's Brisbane property market update, where I will be summarising all of the latest data for the Brisbane property market. Let's get started. So looking at the most recent CoreLogic data for Brisbane for the month up to the end of December 2023, we saw listing volumes decline 18.3% over the 12-month period. Auction clearance rates for the month were at 57.3% according to Apollo Auctions data. There was average buyer demand. Of course, a lot of buyers ease off on their buying decisions in the lead up to Christmas. House values across the month increased 1%, unit values up 1.1%, and gross yields for all dwellings sitting at 4% across our city. Let's look at listing volumes. Now, we do know that listing volumes are lower than last month. So according to SQM research, in November, we had a total of 18,404 listings. That declined to a total of 16,760 listings in December. So that's a decline of 8.93%. However, new listings, they really fell away. We went from 7,764 listings in November that were new through to 5,236 new listings in December. So that was a fall away of 32.56%, which is not surprising. Many sellers do choose to delay their selling decision until the new year. So we do expect some of those listing volumes to increase slightly now that we've commenced 2024. Looking at the sales volumes, they are also a little lower. I will say that PropTrack data, however, has confirmed that the number of inquiries per listing in Brisbane was higher than a year ago. So it does still confirm that there is strong interest in housing across our city. If we look at the auction clearance rates throughout October, November and December, you can see the trend. Clearance rates were fairly firm between October and November, and they did slip away slightly through the 3 active weekends of December before we hit Christmas. I will say that the average number of registered bidders also declined slightly. So in December, that was 3.3 bidders per auction compared to 3.67 in November. Also, the number of active bidders, so that's those who registered that actually raised a paddle, that increased slightly. So in November, it was 58.15%, and in December, that increased to 65.4%. So those buyers that were still in the market were certainly very keen, and they were participating in those auctions. Looking at dwelling values, well, across the month of December, dwelling values across all of Brisbane increased yet again, up 1%. That quarterly trend now is showing 3.7% growth on that 3-month basis. Now, last month, you may recall dwelling values in Brisbane increased 1.3%. So there's been a slight moderation in the rate of growth, and the quarterly growth was at 3.9%. So again, we're starting to see that rate of growth slow down slightly. If we look at the PropTrack data, it also demonstrated positive dwelling price growth for the month of December. So this is in line with the CoreLogic data, as you can see there. The difference between dwelling values over the month from November to December quantified is at the median value $7,947. So you can see the rate of increase over that period of time. If we look at the price segmentation, last month we saw slightly stronger growth in the lowest 25% of property values, as you can see in the left graph there, with the middle 25, or rather the middle 50% and the top 25% of property values not far behind. Whereas you can see now with the most recent data, the top 25% of property values in Brisbane has risen again. So this is a similar growth pattern now to the lowest 25% of property values. So both segments experiencing 4.1% growth over the 3-month period up to the end of November, and the middle segment of the market growing at 3.7%. So this is different to most other capital city markets, with the exception of the Australian Capital Territory or the ACT, but it does still demonstrate there's strong growth in the top end of the market here in Brisbane. If we look at the national 12-month comparison, there's actually been quite a lot of variation in capital city markets across all of Australia throughout the 12 months of 2023. Brisbane's growth actually came in second across the 12-month period, behind Perth. Now, Perth achieved 15.2% growth, whereas Brisbane not far behind at 13.1%. You can see the smaller capital cities, Hobart, Darwin and Canberra, in the middle area there, they experienced very little growth over the 12-month period. So there has been a lot of differences in performance depending on local demand and supply variations. Looking at house growth changes across the month of December. So Brisbane median house prices increased a further 1% in December. That lifts the median value for a house to $875,991, according to CoreLogic. Last month, we were at 1.4%. So again, growth has moderated in the housing segment of the market. Quarterly growth currently at 3.8%. Last month, that was sitting at 4.1%. So it confirms that moderation in the rate of growth here in Brisbane. If you're looking at the median change in house values at the median level, $5,465 has been the monthly change, according to 1% growth at the median value level. It just helps us to quantify the rate of change. We're looking at PropTrack data as well. It confirms house price growth over the month of December also increased, a similar trend to what we saw with the CoreLogic data. Looking at unit values increased 1.1% in Brisbane across the month of December. Quarterly growth sitting at 3.3%. That shows a slight price acceleration. Once again, last month we were sitting at 1% growth in the unit market and the quarterly trend was sitting at 3.1%. So you can see how different segments of the market are actually moving at different rates here in Brisbane. When we look at the last 12 months performance, it appears that the housing market has slightly outperformed the unit market in Brisbane. So annual growth in units recorded a change of 12.2%, whereas the housing market 13.3%. So very, very close, and 1 year where we have experienced very similar growth in both segments of the market. Interestingly, PropTrack data this month for the second month in a row showed that unit values in Brisbane declined very, very slightly, negative 0.01%. Not sure why the two data sets are showing these conflicting results, but it is something that we are aware of. Generally, we talk to the CoreLogic results as a whole, but we're not going to hide this information from our followers. Looking at property value changes, there's been positive growth in both the unit segment of the market and the housing segment of the market now for the last 9 months. So you can see there in the second circle, this light blue bar represents unit price growth and the dark blue bars represent house price growth on a month-by-month basis. And since March 2023, that growth has been positive. And we don't expect that to change anytime in the near future based on what we are seeing on the ground. Looking at vacancy rates, they do remain very tight. So between November and December, we saw vacancy rates increase slightly from 0.9% back up to 1% vacancy across the city. That is nothing of concern for us. Vacancy is still extremely tight and it's well below the peak vacancy rates which we experienced between 2016 and 2017, which were up around 4% for all of Greater Brisbane. Looking at rents, rent growth is still strong. So for the housing segment of the market, we saw rental price growth of 6.7% across the 12-month period. That's putting houses with a gross yield of 3.7% across all of Greater Brisbane. Looking at units, unit rents have seen an increase of 13% across Greater Brisbane, and gross rental yields in the unit market are currently sitting at 5.2%. So for those investors chasing income, the unit segment of the market in Brisbane is definitely providing more opportunity than the housing segment of the market. And as I pointed out, both segments of the market have experienced relatively strong growth over the last 12 months when it comes to capital appreciation. Looking at our market summary, over the 12 months of 2023, Brisbane was the second fastest growing capital city market according to those dwelling price changes, and that was behind Perth. And Brisbane certainly outperformed some of the smaller capital city markets where there was very little growth over that 12-month period. Listing volumes, as we've pointed out today, still very low, stubbornly low, some would say. We do expect to see a slight uptick in the month of January as those sellers that were holding listings actually bring their properties to the market. There's definitely still more buyers than sellers. In our own inquiry in the first couple of weeks of the new year, we've seen very strong inquiry. So a lot of buyers having trouble sourcing properties and looking for professional assistance. Multiple offer is still very common across Brisbane. Many properties are accepting offers prior to auction, so it's really important to understand when it's a good idea to submit a pre-auction offer and when it's worth waiting to see whether the auction will run. That's where our expertise can help to guide you as a buyer. Properties are still selling very quickly, especially those properties that are listed by private treaty sale in desirable locations, of course, and in areas where people have the capacity to continue to pay strong prices for real estate. I would say fundamentals in Brisbane are still in place for continued growth into the early months of 2024. Unless we see a significant shift in the listing volumes or the buyer demand, we still expect price growth to continue on an upward trajectory. I hope that's been a useful market update. If you're wanting to connect with us here at Streamline Property Buyers, please scan this QR code. It's going to take you to some really useful resources, some written market updates, as well as other property buying tips for buying in Brisbane. If you'd like to set up a call with our team, you can also set up a call from this QR code as well. We look forward to next month's update. Until then, bye for now.